Hey folks, Professor Finn here, everyone's favorite funeral service educator and homeless mall Santa. And we're still looking good, man. You know, that barber did a good job last time. So, welcome to May 1st. In anticipation of an upcoming holiday, so to speak, May the 4th be with you. So, if you are going to be celebrating May the 4th, feel free to drop something in the chat. Let me know how you're going to be doing it. Always love to hear from folks. Upload some photos, upload some comments, harass me on social media, knock yourselves right out. So, wanted to launch today's live stream by doing two big shout outs. And the first, I think I'm going to send over to a very good friend of mine who is running for office. So let me get the screen shared here real quick, and bam, there it is. So my friend Carlton May is running for National Funeral Directors Association Secretary. Great guy, wonderful professor. Please, 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 if you are a voting delegate for the NFDA, take some time to go to Carlton May for NFDA.com. Check out his website. If you have questions, ask Carlton. You're going to find him to be just an absolute phenomenal guy, wonderful funeral professional. And of course, I'm a little bit biased because he's a professor at one of my schools. So, take that into consideration, but all around class act. All around class act, and I'm happy to support him in his endeavor for NFDA secretary. Part two, I have another very good friend who is running for an at-large representative position with NFDA. And that's my buddy Steven Johnson. So I've known Steve for a couple of years now. Licensed funeral director out of New York, runs a phenomenal business, smart guy. To say he's a dedicated professional doesn't really do him justice. Take some time, if you are a voting delegate, jump over to NFDA's website, watch his video, read his bio. Again, reach out if you have questions about what he can do for you. He is dedicated to the industry, and I treasure the fact that him and I have become friends, first through professional association, and now developing that relationship into something a bit more personal. So always look forward to seeing Steve. In fact, I just saw him here at the ICCFA conference in Fort Worth. We'll have some photos about that conference here in a second. But again, great guy. If you're a voting delegate for NFDA, please, please, please take some time, learn about these two candidates, inquire what they can do for you if you have questions, and I think you'll be very, very, very happy with what you find out. All right. Click on a couple things here. So, one of the things that I wanted to do today is I was in a meeting not too long ago, and I think it was the American Board Conference, and we're talking about the value of certain instructional tools in the classroom, and among which one of them is I've had some trouble trying to develop for online learning because that presents specific types of logistical challenges. So what I want to do is I want to talk about two things. I'm going to talk about a statement of goals, and I'm talking about an exam wrapper. Now, if you are a faculty member, these are going to be useful to you. These are things that you should integrate into your classroom. These are some serious best practices, and I think you would be very happy with them. Now, if you are a student, you do not have a faculty member that does these. Nothing says you have to wait for them to do it. You can go ahead, you can usurp these documents for yourself. You can use them to plan how you're going to succeed in the class. And you can use them to tweak how it is you are studying to get maximum effect out of the classes you are taking. And mind you, these are not just for funeral service. This is for anything and anyone who is at any level of education. Now, obviously, you don't want to introduce this to your, niece or nephew who's going into kindergarten because, they can't read the thing. But for people that are in high school, for people who are going into college, if you're doing graduate work, all this can be helpful for you. So let's dive over to the shared screen and take a quick peek here. So first up, I have a statement of goals. Now, this is the very document that I used when I was actively teaching classes at my dearly beloved Miami-Dade College, where I taught for 10 years. Um, so, what is this? Well, it's a statement of goals, just like the form says. And this is a great piece of paper to put at the top of your notes binder. So that way, every time you look at it, you can see what it is you wanted to accomplish. Are you achieving that? If not, maybe you need to realign what you're thinking, what you're doing in order to get there. So because this was a document that I handed out to all of my students along with my syllabi on day one, and they turned these into me. They turned these into me on day one. I scanned them all, and I gave them all back. Okay? We would touch base with these things as we go through the class. So, first off, think about, what are your goals for this course? So if I'm enrolling in a course, what is my goal for the course? Goal can be super simple. Don't overthink it. It could be, dude, I just want to pass this. It's a prerequisite. I got to take it whether I like it or not. We've all been there. Okay, we've all been there. Let me tell you something. One of the great things about grad school, there's none of that. Generally, when you get into grad school or you start doing doctoral work, you're taking things that focus right in on what it is that you are studying. So the higher you go, the more specified you get. You want to learn new skills? Do you want to become better educated? Do you want to learn subject matter? Do you want to get mastery over what it is that's being taught? What is it? So write down that class goal, whatever it is. Then write down the tasks that you need to do to accomplish the goal. And you want at least 3 of them. You want at least 3 of them. So if you're just taking this to get the course checked off the old degree audit so that you can move on with your life, what is task number 1 that you are going to put on there in order for you to pass that class? It might be something like, utilize my online calendar or my Google Calendar to set aside study time and then stay regimented to it. It could be, turn off my phone to minimize distractions during study time. Form bonds with students around me in order to put together a good study group. What are your goals? What are your goals? And then as you proceed through the course, look at your goals. Are you staying true to those goals? Are those goals achievable? You may use the same goal in different classes. You may change things up. And if you're a faculty member, this is pure gold for you. You're going to learn so much about your students that you'll be able to really hone in on how to communicate with them. Why are they there? If they're there because it's a prerequisite course, well, you might need to up your game a little bit to keep them interested. They're not there because they're you, because they're looking for you as a professor. They're there because they just need the class. But what if that's different? What if you read that and it says, personal class goal, I want to take more classes with you. I had you before, want to have you more because I learn in your class. Utilize office hours. These are all things that are very valuable to you as an educator. The second thing here is an exam wrapper. So the way that I handled my exam wrappers, if you are a faculty person and you are in face-to-face courses, you will probably be handing out scratch paper to your students if they are taking exams in your face-to-face classes. If you are not using scratch paper in your face-to-face classes, and you are a funeral service professor, I am telling you, you are doing yourself a disservice. Part of what we do as funeral service educators is we want to get students almost muscle memory reflexive on what they need to do when they sit down to take a board exam. And that starts on the first class on their first day. Students, graduates, board exam candidates. When you go to take your board exam, you are going to be given something by which you may use to write down notes when the exam begins. This is a technique called brain dumping. I've got videos on my channel that talk about brain dumping and strategies for success in taking a board exam, strategies for success in taking any assessment. And whether it's a whiteboard, whether it's a laminated sheet and a dry erase marker, or a grease pencil, doesn't matter. The principle's the same. You take your scratch paper and you immediately begin writing certain things down that are going to be useful to you for the assessment you are taking. And there are certain things that you should be doing on every piece of scratch paper, even if it's not even relevant to the course you're taking. What do I mean by that? Part of what we study is accounting. There's an accounting equation. And if you've had trouble with accounting, maybe you want to write down the accounting equation in every single piece of scratch paper going forward. That's not a hard one. Assets equal liabilities plus, what's C? Type it in the chat, right? But you're not limited to that. Write down the embalming equation. C times V equals C1 times V1. Or C1 times V1 equals C2 times V2. It depends on who's teaching you. But it's always going to be a C and a V on one side and then a C and a V on the other. What does that mean? I've got a video on how you can keep your short-term exposure limit numbers and your permissible exposure limit numbers sorted. It's about drawing a quick diagram, writing in the numbers. So even if you're taking a course in small business management where they don't even talk about the exposure limits, when you take an exam, you get your note paper, the first thing you do is you draw the graph. Why? So it's reflexive, it's in your head, the numbers are right there, you don't have to think about it anymore, you can just look and know exactly where you are. You could write down the color wheel and just get in the habit of drawing it, segmenting it, and then putting in all the initials so that if you get a question about complementary colors or a color scheme, double complementary, for instance, the color wheel's right in front of you. And why is that beneficial? Because think about how many assessments you are going to take in mortuary school. And on every piece of paper, on every assessment, you have drawn the same exact thing. By the time you get to your Pearson VUE Test Center to take your board exam, you will be drawing those things from memory. It'll be reflexive. 15 years from now, if someone asked you to draw the color wheel and find a complement, you'd probably be able to draw the color wheel and find a complement. It is extremely beneficial to use your scratch paper. Really interesting side note. Shout out to my friends over at the conference. Okay, the International Conference of Funeral Service Examining Boards. They come to the American Board Conference every single year. They give us an update. They let us know things are going on. They interact with us. One thing that is heartbreaking, when you go to take your board exam, there is a pre-test disclosure that you have to go through. That is timed. When you start that disclosure, you have, I believe, 5 minutes to finish it, and if not, the exam locks. So what you don't want to do is get to the disclosure thinking, oh, I've got all the time to brain dump everything I want in my notes. You don't. Test-taking strategies. If you want to take a minute or so to write down some high-pressure things to get it out, do it, but get through the disclosure. When the timer starts on your test, you will still have the full amount of time the moment you get to question number 1. There is more time there for you to brain dump. Do not do it during the disclosure. On the other side of the note paper, if you are a professor, that's where I would have the exam wrapper, or the assessment reflection sheet, as I called it. So it's important, even if you are a student, write down what class this is for. First thing, do you think the questions on the assessment accurately reflect the topics covered in the class? Yes or no? And if the answer is yes and you are a student, good. The professor covered exactly what it is they said they're going to test you on. If it's no, you need to find out why those questions are different. And that's either a sit down with the professor or it's an email to the professor, but you need to interact with the professor to find out why you feel the questions did not accurately reflect what you thought was going to be assessed. If you're a professor, that's very important. If your students felt that, yep, they were adequately assessed and they expected what it is they got, even if they got a bad score, the information was there, that's not your fault if they didn't get it. Well, if they didn't get it right. But if they say no, you need to ask that question. So why do you feel this way? Especially if that's widespread in the class. I'm going to give you a hint, professors. If you get a lot of no's and you hand out study guides, it's probably the study guides. They think that's the only stuff you're going to assess them on. Probably the most important question. In preparation for this exam, how much time and hours did you spend reviewing for this exam? That is everything you did in preparation for this exam. Now, of that time, how did you spend that time? Reading class notes, filling out study guides, filling out personal study guides, outlining, reading, listening to live recordings, listening to vanilla recordings. Remember, Professor Finn's got a bunch of lectures on the YouTube channel, free of charge for you to listen to. Full college-level mortuary school lectures based out of textbooks that are used or are now reference material for your classes. How much time did you spend with a group or a study partner? Did you utilize extra tools like Quizlet or StudyStack? Or is there something else? Write it down. Professor's going to really be interested if you're doing something different and it's successful. Maybe you're using NBE Wizard, maybe the DEAD Simulator. What did you do and how much time did you spend doing it? Make sure the numbers equal 100%. You want to ensure that you have the entire time frame captured. Now, I know some schools do not let you review questions. That is more common than you would think in mortuary programs. But if you have the benefit of reviewing your questions, how much did you lose to some common errors? What percentage did you lose because you did not understand a concept? What percentage did you lose because you made a mistake? My personal favorite is you click on one of the selections and then you take your mouse and you hit the scroll wheel by accident. Or you move your mouse and you left click and you don't realize that the scroll wheel will move on some types of questions and some learning management systems, the answer up and down. If you click somewhere in the box that you can't see, it's still a hit box, and it will change your answer, even if you're not clicking on the text. How much did you miss because you're not able to understand the question? There's a big difference between not understanding the concept, not understanding the material, and not understanding the question. If the question is vague, if the question is confusing, that is different than not understanding the material. And the number one killer of mortuary students everywhere How much did you lose because you second guessed yourself? You changed your answer. Click it and move on. Period. Click it and move on. Your first guess is usually the right guess. And how many for some other reason? What is that? Professor's going to want to know. If you're a student and you fill this out, you can go to your professor with this and say, what can I do to fix some of these things? Can you explain this concept better? I thought this question was confusing. This is insanely useful. When you are a professor, the students turn these into you. Now, if you were lucky enough to have a scanning device right there at the podium that you can scan that and hand it back, great. If not, take it back to the office, give it back next class. And what I would do is I would input these into my grading spreadsheet. I would track every one of these. And then I would go back and I would show the class the results. Well, of all the wrong answers, of all the problems, here's how many wrong answers were a result of you just not understanding the material. How many of you thought the question was confusing? How many of you second-guessed yourselves into a wrong answer? Everyone can see they're in the same boat. When someone thinks, oh, well, you know, this professor's questions are awful. You're looking at the numbers. If it says of all the wrong answers, only 3% were because of not understanding a concept, that's not a class-wide problem. That is a you problem. And that you problem can only be solved by you. If it is a class-wide problem, you as the professor have some explaining to do. You need to figure out why they're not taking the information. Based on this information, what will you do differently in preparing for the next examination? And a perfectly reasonable response for a good grade is absolutely nothing. I've got it drilled down. Keep it simple. Be specific. You are trying to fix something. So you need to dial in what it is you're going to change. What would you like the professor to clarify in class based on your answers? If you have an awful lot of these from not understanding a concept, put in the concept. Professor needs to know what it is you're not getting. Let me tell you, one of the most frustrating things I had as a professor was teaching organic chemistry in funeral service chemistry classes. One, I didn't understand it when I first started teaching it. I didn't understand it in school. When it finally clicked and I finally started teaching it the way it needed to be taught so people can master the information, made a heck of a big difference, man. Really did. But I'd have students. You're not explaining this. You're not explaining this. It's not enough. In preparation for this exam, how much time and hours did you spend? Hour and a half on a chemistry exam. What did you do? I read the book. You read the book for an hour and a half. Okay. And you wonder why you don't know it. Did you go back and watch the video where I went through step by step and explained it? Well, I was busy this week. I didn't have time to watch the pre-recorded lecture, and I missed class. Oh. Let me tell you what that translates to from professor to student. Not my problem. That's a you problem. If you go listen to my chemistry lectures on YouTube right now, promise you, if you put in enough time, you'll get how to name organic compounds. That'll put you ahead of most chemistry majors going into college. It's crazy. When you have the right mindset and the right person explaining it, makes all the difference in the world. What can the professor do to help you? That's important, professors. See what they have to say. If you want to get better at what you do, this is how you get the feedback. You don't need to wait until the end of the quarter or the semester when you get your aggregated student feedback. You're getting it in real time. Student needs change depending on the time and the population, ethnicity, gender, social circumstances, personal wealth environment. As those things change, student needs will change. So you need to be looking at what it is that they need help with so that you can adapt as a professor. This is an extremely powerful tool for a professor to use. And as a student, it's an extremely powerful tool for your improvement, especially this top section. I didn't have the benefit of this when I was in school. These weren't a thing. But I can tell you with my experience using them, that when people spent less time reading their book and spending more time listening to recordings, filling out personal study guides, meeting with their groups, grades generally improved. They found that study blend that worked for them. Some people, they need the group environment. 60 to 70% of their time is with their study group. For others, they might meet with the group once a week. That's all they have time for, potentially. Might be all that they need. This is an extremely, extremely powerful tool. Now, when this recording goes up on YouTube after it's done processing, I will try to take these forms and include them in the description underneath. If not, you can always send me an email at askbigbadfinn@gmail.com and I can email you these forms that method as well. So, if you don't have access to this in the description of the video, you can ask for me and I'll send them to you via email. All right. If you thought that was useful, please feel free to drop something in the chat, drop something in the comments. Got hope in the comments. I'll be taking my last exam on the 4th and graduate on the 8th. Hell yeah, dude. Look at that. Just in time to become a full Jedi Master. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Awesome. Congratulations. I'm sure you're going to absolutely ace it. Close a couple things here. That was Foxit. That is now closed. So, had a great time in Houston. Big shout out to President Cody Lepaski at Commonwealth Institute. He's a very gracious host. He's a great guy. I'm glad to call him my friend. Commonwealth's a beautiful school. And the museum is always top notch. The museum is absolutely phenomenal. Has been updated since the last time I was there. That was, probably about maybe 4 to 5 years ago. Just really cool. If you've not been to the National Museum of Funeral History, you need to go. Make it a plan to try to get down to Houston sometime and check that out. Cool stuff. If you're on my Facebook, I have some photos of my 2 visits that I've been there. I did not take photos, or a lot of photos this time, and the ones that I did take, I did not upload to social media. But I have plenty of stuff on there, so you can see what past exhibits look like. One of the cool things they're doing now is you can do a virtual tour. So if you go to the museum website, you can purchase a virtual tour and look at the museum through that type of method. So I have not tried that. One, because I'm just too cheap and I spend my money on like other toys, hence 2 proton packs in the back. But nonetheless, if that's the closest you can come to the museum, by all means, it'll be some of the best 15, 16 bucks that you can possibly spend. do. So this week, concluding today actually, the International Cemetery Cremation and Funeral Association met in Houston, Texas. I'm sorry, Fort Worth, Texas, just down the street from me. We have an awesome booth. We have an awesome booth. And I want to throw a huge shout out to our Senior Director of Accreditation and Alumni Relations, Wayne Cavender. Wayne's been in the biz long time, over 3 decades. And he does a phenomenal job planning what our booth is going to look like, putting it together, visualizing it so it just looks really professional. Before the crowd hit and the table started getting messy and people started just taking books left and right, awesome presentation. And hey, if you are ever at a convention and you see the booth, please, please, please grab one of these Pierce College's notebooks. People love these things, and we want you to take them. We want you to take them. We know how useful they are. It's why we keep bringing them back to all of our conventions. Do me a favor. If you've got one of these books, drop it in the comments later in the chat how you use this book. Give us some ideas. Maybe we need to update the format. Maybe we add some things to it. Who knows? But there are things that we can do. So let us know. I also want to throw some shout outs to Ruth Ann Dissatel. She is the president of our Pierce Mortuary Colleges Alumni Association. That's her right here in the dark jacket with the pin on. She was gracious enough to come in from New Jersey. Travel down here to represent Pierce alumni at the booth. That is phenomenal dedication. And it's the first time that I've met her. I've had her as a friend on Facebook for a long, long time. I love reading her posts, and now I got to sit there, kind of break bread with her, learn more about her, and she's a phenomenal individual. She really is. More shout-outs to our academic dean of the Mid-America campus, Geralda Aldajust. She came down, and she was there hosting, meeting people, greeting people. We had some people interested in the Mid-America campus, so it was great that she was there. And also the ever-awesome Lisa Meehan, the academic dean of the Dallas Institute of Funeral Service Funeral Service. It's like funeral service education. It's just ingrained in me now. Lisa's been a friend for a long, long time, and she was at the booth helping out, talking to people about the Dallas Institute, and just being overall awesome. So thank you all for being there. And last shout out goes to Professor Travis Newman. Travis is a full-time professor at our Dallas campus. He came and helped out at the booth and got to meet some students. Again, phenomenal. Thank you all for the help. Wayne appreciates you coming and helping moderate the traffic as well as helping set up and tear down things. So, got a little picture here of the alumni who all went out to dinner. We got Mrs. Dissertel there on the left, Dean Aldajust, Mr. Cavender, my buddy Jaquel, phenomenal guy. He is a graduate of our Gupton Jones campus. And let me tell you what, sharp, man. We are so proud to have people like him graduate from Gupton Jones. And of all things that would happen at a funeral convention, I got to meet Drew Pearson. So my right across from our booth was a gentleman by the name of Danny Smith at Select Funeral Funding. And it turns out that Danny, his company, was who we used when I was in practice to do our insurance assignments. So if you're unfamiliar with what an insurance assignment company does for the funeral home, if a family comes in and presents payment in the form of, can you take the money from the insurance policy, we have to perform an assignment on that. And what Danny's company does is Danny's company, for a small fee, will perform the assignment, but he will pay the funeral home right up front. And once he pays the funeral home's paid. If something happens bad later, that's his company's risk. So that is one heck of a good deal for funeral homes. So if you're unhappy with your current provider, if you're doing insurance assignments, he's not sponsoring me, he's not paying me to say it, you might want to talk to Danny. We had as a professional using his service back in the day, working in Seminole, Florida, in the St. Petersburg area, we always had good experiences with his company. But Drew came on by and hung out for a little bit, got to meet people, got to chat with him. I was the last guy in line. I was the last guy in line as they tore it all down. And he was kind enough to allow me to wear his Super Bowl ring. So let me tell you what, those rings are legit. Like, that is some cool stuff. So what a phenomenal guy. Now that I'm in Texas, obviously I have a soft spot for Dallas teams. Not to say that I don't still have a soft spot for my Dolphins and my Buccaneers over there in Florida. So I lived in Florida for so long. But what a great guy. Appreciated the opportunity to be able to meet with him. And you never know what's going to happen if you go to a funeral service convention. You never know who you're going to bump into or what opportunities might be there. So thank you, Danny, for getting Drew to come on down, and thank you, Drew, for being just such a great guy. Check over at the chat real quick. All right, let's get to the articles. But before we do that, so I got a real good friend, Dr. Mark Evely over at Wayne State University. And his schedule's a bit hectic. But when I was talking to him over at the American Board Conference, oh, look at me. I'm all tipsy. I told him that he's got a guest intro that he hasn't seen yet. And so I promised him that I would play his intro for him on this video so that when he has time to go back and watch the video, he'd get to see what his guest introduction looks like. So let's roll that footage. So that's just me throwing some shade to my boy. You know you're my brother. I love you. Hope you're well up there in the frigid north, and I'll see you when I see you. So let's get on to the articles. First up, if you were unaware, there was this really cool thing that happened where funeral directors took over Times Square. The first call sparks national momentum. A profession that so often serves quietly stepped into the spotlight on April 23rd. Death care professionals from across the country were honored in Times Square through the First Call, a national recognition campaign created to spotlight funeral directors and the care they provide families every day. More than 150 funeral professionals, family members, friends, and supporters gathered in New York City for the live viewing. The event's live stream reached more than 18,000 viewers, and participants' social posts quickly generated tens of thousands of additional views. Created by Chapter in partnership with NFDA, National Funeral Directors Association, Tribute Technology, and Homesteaders Life Company, the campaign was designed to bring public attention to the people who guide families through life's hardest moments with compassion, steadiness, and care. For one evening, the people who answered the first call were broadcast in one of the most visible places in the world. The energy in Times Square was something I'll never forget, said Rian Chowdhury, founder and CEO of Chapter. And if I botched your name, sorry, brother. You could feel the pride, the emotion, and the sense that this profession was finally being recognized in a way it rarely is. It meant a lot to all of us. For participants, the night represented something more than personal recognition. Some shared reflections on the pride they felt seeing their colleagues recognized in such a public way. It's hard to put into words what we experienced that night, said Lindsey Granson, Chief Operating Officer at Heritage Family. Watching funeral directors from around the country be honored in Times Square was incredible. This profession is one of the most important and often overlooked, and that night was all about them. The live stream replay remains visible on Chapter's Facebook page, and event highlights continue to be shared with social media with hashtag #TheFirstCall. With the Times Square launch complete, Chapter will now expand the First Call nationally in partnership with hundreds of local television and radio stations. Additional campaign updates, participation opportunities, and event highlights are available at chapter.com/TheFirstCall. In this next phase, participants will receive media and community outreach resources, including local press materials, photos, video assets, and storytelling tools designed to extend the recognition into communities nationwide. The initiative is intended to help families and communities better understand the depth of care funeral professionals provide every day. So thank you, Chapter, for doing this. It was awesome to see some familiar faces up there. We had Erin Wilson, Funeral Women Lead. Dean Aldejust from Mid America was on there. My buddy Carlton May for NFDA was up on the screen. Bunches of others. Man, it was just awesome to see that. So from our friends over at funeralvision.com, hey, you know what? While I was at ICCFA, I was able to bump into Tom Parmalee of funeralvision.com, and he's such a great dude. Got to talk with him for a second. We may be doing more things together. I look forward to doing that. But man, that was great chatting with you, bro. If you see this, so Foundation Partners, Funeral Directors, Pay It Forward with Mortuary Mentor Program. This is super cool. This is super cool. Recognizing the challenges faced by new professionals entering funeral service, Foundation Partners Group Funeral Directors Allison Kraft, General Manager at the Cremation Society of Minnesota, and Allison Hentz, Community Engagement Lead, have launched Mortuary Mentor, a national online support network designed to support mortuary students, interns, and new licensees during their critical first years in the profession. The Pay It Forward program grew from a series of speaking engagements at mortuary schools in the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area, where Kraft and Hentz have been sharing their passion for the profession for many years. Mortuary Mentor expands those efforts nationwide by offering quarterly online meetups paired with a year-round email connection that allows participants to seek guidance, share experiences, and receive real-time support from seasoned professionals. With the support of Foundation Partners, Kraft and Hentz held their first Mortuary Mentor virtual meetup in February, with a second event planned for May 6th. More than 50 students and early career professionals attended the inaugural session, and the program has generated interest from more than 90 mortuary science schools nationwide. 90? That might be an international number because there's only 58 schools in the United States, but I'll take 90. I'll take 90 because you probably have some people sneaking in from Canada. Kraft, a licensed funeral director with 15 years of experience, began her career in an unsupportive environment that led her to leave the profession briefly. Her return to funeral service, this time with a culture committed to mentorship and professional development, shaped her leadership philosophy and fueled a decade-long commitment to guiding new directors and building collaborative, stable teams. It's well documented that nearly 3/4 of new funeral directors leave the profession within their first year, said Kraft. The demands of funeral service, including long hours and emotional exhaustion, can be overwhelming without strong mentorship and community. Mortuary Mentor is about helping young professionals build confidence, resilience, and long-term career success. Hentz entered funeral service as a second career in 2019 and experienced a markedly different introduction to the profession, benefiting from structured mentorship, psychological safety, and consistent support throughout her education and internship. Together, their contrasting career paths highlight the importance of thoughtful onboarding and sustained encouragement for the next generation of funeral service professionals. Anytime we have had the opportunity to talk openly about funeral service and the realities that aren't always covered in the mortuary science class or the mortuary school classroom, it's a win for students, Hentz said. Connecting with someone in funeral service who isn't an instructor or preceptor can be especially valuable for students seeking honest conversation about support, burnout, and work-life balance. We've had hundreds of emails from mentees seeking guidance and assistance, looking for positions and direction as they navigate the funeral industry in the early days of their career. Unlike more formal mentorship programs offered through the professional associations, the Mortuary Mentor emphasizes connection through active listening, encouragement, and mutual trust. Hold the phone. I'm going to make an argument. You ready for this? That all mentorship programs need to emphasize active listening, encouragement, and mutual trust. And it should not matter at what level or who is the provider. That is the whole point of mentorship. Like, dude.
Son of a bitch.
It's all about helping people, Kraft said. Funeral director is a title, but there's a person behind it. If you're not paying attention to that, burnout is inevitable. New professionals will make mistakes, and we remind mentees that mistakes only become failures if you don't learn from them. Topics for the spring mortuary mentor meeting on May 6th will include crafting a winning resume and preparing for the national board exam administered by the International Conference of Funeral Service Examining Boards. Meetings are open to all funeral professionals. To register, email mortuarymentor@foundationpartners.com. Craft and Hens will also be featured speakers at the Cremation Association of North America's 108th Cremation Innovation Convention, taking place on August 12th to 14th in Minneapolis, Minnesota. On August 13th, they will present a session From Mortuary School to Service, Why Mentorship Matters. Great job. Keep it up. Let's hope that has some impact. Key factor to think, though. My good buddy over at Oklahoma, John Fritsch, Dr. John Fritsch, he did some research on people leaving the industry or leaving being a funeral director. One of the big questions that came out of that is, what does that mean? What are they doing? So, when a person transitions out of being a funeral director, or a funeral director, embalmer, or whatever you are in your state, are you staying within funeral service but in a different role? Or are you just jettisoning out completely and have nothing to do? So, that's really the big question for the studies, is when people leave, what do they do? Because here's just a fact of life. There are so few of us. When openings happen, especially if it's a non-family focusing role, we lose that professional to that role. So are they out of the industry? That's really the big thing that I think we need to see some research on, is when people leave, what are they doing? Are they moving to an ancillary field? Are they moving up? Are they coming into education? Are they going back and getting a different degree and just leaving funeral service entirely? What's happening there? I'm really happy for this one. Let's get this one shared. Funeral Women Lead elevates Patty Neuswanger to Executive Director. Funeral Women Lead is proud to announce the promotion of Patty Neuswanger to Executive Director effective immediately. That's April 28, 2026. Since joining the organization in 2025 as Senior Director of Operations, Neuswanger has brought a clarity of vision, depth of experience, and a quiet but unmistakable force of leadership that has already begun reshaping what is possible for women in funeral service. With more than 2 decades of leadership in nonprofit strategy, education, events, and organizational development, Neuswanger is not stepping into this role as a newcomer to the work. She arrives already having earned the trust of the team, the profession, and the women this foundation exists to serve. Neuswanger's path to Funeral Women Lead is one shaped by genuine commitment rather than convenience. Her career includes senior leadership roles at the National Funeral Directors Association, which is where I know her, and she is awesome, where she served as Vice President of Education and Meetings, and at select independent funeral homes, where she led member engagement programming with a particular focus on women in funeral service, next-generation leaders, and first-generation funeral professionals. What does this mean for women in funeral service? This promotion is more than an organizational milestone. It is a signal of what Funeral Women Lead was built to model, that when organizations invest in developing women as leaders, the return extends far beyond the walls of any single foundation. Under Neuswanger's leadership as Executive Director, Funeral Women Lead will continue to grow its annual Leadership Academy, Leadership and Wellness Summits, mentoring and coaching programs, community conversations, and scholarship opportunities, all designed to meet women where they are and walk along them toward where they are capable of going. For the passionate professionals who show up every day committed to this work, and for the dedicated advocates who invest in making sure the next generation of women leaders has a real path forward, Neuswanger's elevation to this role is a sign that the foundation is building for what comes next. Patty has earned this expanded role through her commitment to the mission and her deep understanding of the women we serve. She brings both the operational rigor and the human insight that this work demands. I'm proud to see her step into this chapter of leadership, and I know the profession will feel the impact of her presence for years to come, said Lisa Bowie, founder, Funeral Women Lead. Neuswanger's leadership instincts extend beyond professional life. She has long been active in volunteer roles supporting underserved communities through organizations including the Woodfield Children's Association, Families for Russian and Ukrainian Adoptions, United Methodist Women, and Literacy Services of Wisconsin. This breadth of experience reflects a woman who shows up for people across contexts and across communities. When she is not leading, you might find her on a trail discovering a new restaurant, cheering on her husband Kurt's bands, or somewhere in the world feeling her love of travel and lifelong learning. These are not footnotes to her work. They are part of what makes her the kind of leader who knows how to connect, how to listen, and how to build something that lasts. So congratulations, Patty. It's awesome. I'm happy for you, and I look forward to our next interaction. Sorry I was not able to connect with you at ICCFA. I think I might have saw you walking the floor, but did not, try to jump in traffic there to stop you and say hi or something like that, so that's on me. Next, we're jumping over to Funeral Director Daily. This one ought to be interesting. So these are going to be some cold reads. I have not looked at these, so we'll go through these together. California County sees fit to restrict natural organic reduction remains. Oh, California. California. Will you ever just not want to get involved? I'll give you a hint. Government bureaucracy can safely avoid being involved in some things. Let's see what's going on here. Over the last month or so, we have followed a growing discontent in Fresno County, California, and specifically an area along the San Joaquin River, about the process of natural organic reduction remains being spread on public land. Someone needs to give some people some history lessons of how soil gets nutrients. It's not just through cow poop. As you can read in this recent article from the Desert Sun, Fresno County officials say they were shocked to learn that compost made from human remains was being spread on public land along the San Joaquin River in Central California. The issue came about as it became known that the San Joaquin River Parkway Trust had an agreement with Earth Funerals, who is described as a Washington-based company that promotes human composting as an alternative to burial or cremation. According to the Desert Sun article, the revelation has triggered backlash from county leaders, a state agency, and local tribes who say the practice crossed legal and cultural lines. According to this article from the Mid-Valley Times, Fresno County has introduced a new law banning the spread of reduced human remains, also known as human compost, on some public and private lands. According to the Mid-Valley Times article, the practice of natural organic reduction is currently allowed in 13 states, according to the National Funeral Directors Association, and will become legal in California next year, although the process is not permitted in the state at the moment. There is no existing state law that specifically bans the spreading of the soil compost that is made from natural organic reduction. The article continues with this information. Beginning January 1st, 2027, the state law will regulate the spreading of reduced human remains in the same way it regulates cremated remains. People will be able to scatter remains in areas where no local prohibition exists, and they have written permission of the property owner or the government agency, and remains are not in a container or distinguishable to the public. Dude, it's dirt. This means the new law in Fresno County, housed under the section of the county ordinance that regulates a land application of biosolids, would be considered a local prohibition under state law. People could still scatter reduced human remains on private property, however, so long as it's not on or near where food is grown for human consumption. What are bodies if not organic fertilizer in the long run? So now people are offended that we bury bodies in dirt that then get consumed by the dirt. Okay. Yeah. Now I'm trying to let this sink in for a second. Oh, come on! So Tom, what do you have to say, buddy? I'm somewhat surprised that this issue has not been brought up before this time. I agree with you. However, natural organic reduction is a relatively new process for human disposition. It will take the general public and many religious groups time to understand the process and then make their opinions known. It would not be so realistic to assume that issues with the process of NOR and memorialization of the final NOR remains would be immediately accepted by all parties who may have an interest, including public landowners. Dude, my favorite's going to be when people start just taking the soil and putting it on their own lawns out front. So every time the mailman walks over Grandpa to deliver a package, or Amazon, high-five something over to the porch, good deal. Is that going to be disrespectful? Let's find out together. Next up, are we asking the right question? Over my years as an active funeral director, I'd be called to the place of death and eventually asked the family before I left, are you thinking about burial or cremation? If you're not a funeral director, it is a question that needs an answer because how the funeral director would take care of the deceased once back at the funeral home would be dependent on that answer. As the funeral services move forward, especially with the continued growth of cremation, I wonder if that is the wrong question in today's world. Don't have to wonder, I'm just going to tell you yes. Not only for the funeral director, but for the family as well. You see, families cannot possibly know all of the options that are available for memorialization of a loved one today. What they don't know might cause them to make a decision that they may regret later. If you were the funeral director that didn't let them know of the options available, they might believe that you didn't prepare them properly to make the necessary arrangements. That's going to lead to a lawsuit. And didn't care enough about them to go through the options with them. Tom Ryan, CEO of Service Corporation International, made these comments in his February 2026 earnings call that relates to the supposition. We actually have piloted in a few markets now in the process of rolling out to more specific a specific focus on that cremation consumer. And some of that is putting videos in our locations that show the opportunities to the cremation consumer and just making it more visible to our visitors and to the clients that we're serving. The quote was not an isolated incident, as Ryan made this similar comment in his third quarter 2025 earnings call 3 months prior. We have a lot of products that I tell you consumers really don't have familiarity with. I think a lot of cremation consumers come in and really don't understand what we have available. So we're really focused this year with some consumer research that we've done about trying to tie that consumer in a better way to educate them about what we have. Because we found in the focus groups that almost 0 out of 10 knew what we had, and about 8 out of 10 once they saw it said, I'm interested in looking. Doesn't mean they're going to buy, but I think there's a consumer there that we probably have not done as good a job with as we've done with the burial consumer. So, I guess my comment before we go look at Mr. Anderson's take is that I've had numerous individuals work for corporate funeral homes, not just SCI. But I am told of time limits. How long they have to meet with the family, how long they have to get everything done and move on to the next one. That's a productivity number. Well, seems to me, again, I'm not the brightest crayon in the box, even though I've got this new beanie to kind of compensate for that, that you might want your funeral directors talking more about them, which means that's going to be more time in the arrangement conference. And that's going to kill some of your productivity numbers. But it might increase the bottom line, especially if they're buying better. So hey, videos are a good first step. Nothing beats talking to the professional and building rapport. I will die on that hill every single time. Now, let's get back to Tom. He's been patiently waiting. Here's my point. When we ask the burial or cremation question, we ask a question that's either or answer to it. If the deceased family says burial, virtually everyone, even in this day of more and more options, proceeds with the closed mindset that we're having a casket, visitation, service, and burial. Well, there might be some people that think that when they say burial, I just think of immediate burial at our convenience, until they tell me something different. If a family says cremation, everybody proceeds with the idea of a simple or direct cremation that may or may not have a service. What about if we would ask an open-ended question such as, how do you plan to permanently memorialize your loved one? All I'll say to that doesn't roll off the tongue that well for me. I don't know that I like that for me personally. Consumers may not easily understand the term memorialization, bingo, but that opens up the ability for the funeral director to talk about all kinds of options. Some of those options, such as green burials, burial of cremated remains with monuments, cremated remains orbiting Earth. Don't write this idea off as new Artemis space program, bring a new interest back to this solution. Okay, so Artemis circumnavigates the moon, but Elon Musk launching a Tesla didn't generate enough interest to get people to want to launch cremated remains into orbit? Come on, you're killing me. Keepsake solidified remains such as parting stone, cremation jewelry, niches, and on and on. Those are options that most cremation consumers have not even thought about, which blows my mind because I try to talk about these as often as possible when I was meeting with families, and that's going on, 15, 16 years ago. And you're not only doing them a favor by mentioning their availability, but you may be doing yourself a favor by bringing about more revenue, much in the form of commissions that can be like a margin on a casket sale from the third parties to the funeral home for a case that might have simply been a direct cremation with no service. Absolutely. I mean, this is what frustrates me about this entire type of situation. This is stuff that I was being taught as a funeral director back in the, about 2010. And here we are 16 years later, people still aren't trying to educate their consumers? Like, come on, man. It wasn't magic that I generally had higher instances of people attaching value-added services to a cremation arrangement. And it wasn't magic. It was me just talking about them and answering questions and pointing things out and working with them to try to find what the best fit was. Come on. It's really unfortunate that we don't have conventions for consumers like we have at NFDA and ICCFA. So just an expo where they could come in and they could check out things that are available there. Now, who would attend those things? I don't know. But maybe we should pilot something like that. I've often thought in the past has been the disposition method that drove the memorialization process when that was simply earth-bearer cremated remains in an urn. In today's world, I sometimes think the choice of the memorialization, what is planned to be done with the remains, full body or cremation, many times leads to the solution of how the disposition method will be chosen. Absolutely. Another way to say this is, worry about the funeral, and the disposition will take care of itself. You'll know based off of what it is they want to plan. Next up, from April 17th, make sure your obituary postings get seen. It's imperative in today's information age where all kinds of information is available to the public that the obituaries your funeral home disseminates get seen by the appropriate audience. It's no different than what I do with the funeral director daily, using the right techniques to make sure my postings on Facebook get maximum exposure within the death care community audience. With your local funeral home, if your postings are hitting the wrong targets or getting scrolled over, you're not only disappointing those that use your funeral home by not getting their service message out, but you are also more than likely falling behind, on building your brand and turning casual observers into followers and potential customers. Time to hit the old glass. I get it. There is a lot involved with running your own funeral home and taking the time to make sure you are reaching the proper audience to both please your customers and build your brand market share. It's not always top of the moment situation, and that needs to be addressed at the funeral home. However, if you are not regularly making the time to address things such as publicity and complete customer satisfaction, that neglect will probably come back to haunt you in the form of lower service volumes. If you can succeed in getting more eyes on your obituaries, you can probably not only drive higher customer satisfaction numbers, but can also probably increase brand awareness, drive more website traffic, and stay a top-of-mind name in your community. That's why making sure that you have the best reach and visibility for obituaries is so important. That's why I might argue that it is important you look into Ring Ring Marketing's newly created feature titled Obituary Promotion Service. Ring Ring Marketing's founder Welton Hong has proved for years how his services can help funeral homes gain his business, and on this informational page about obituary promotion service, he explains in a short video how he can help you promote your obituaries to a more marketing-driven feature. Welton's a pretty cool guy. I've been in the room where he's done some presentations, and he knows his stuff. What's Tom got to say? Like I said earlier, I get it about being busy and the idea that marketing strategy, especially one that seems as innocuous as obituary visibility in the market, takes time. However, it is not only about the time. Business strategy in today's funeral home world can be many siloed, and it just is not possible to be an expert in all of the various silos that need to be addressed. More and more funeral homes are now contracting with marketing services such as Ring Ring Marketing to not only get professional advice, but simply save their time so they can spend that time working one-on-one with the families they're serving, right? This ties back in to something we just looked at with the mentorship article. as there are less of us and we are being put into different types of positions, especially if we get into management and ownership, we may not be handing off some of those duties. One of the things I really love about Steve Johnson running for at-large representative is the fact that he still meets with families. He is working his funeral business. He doesn't just sit in a chair and watch everything kind of happen and steps in only in rare occasions. The guy likes getting his hands dirty with the job, which is a good thing. It keeps you grounded. It keeps you in touch with your families. There's all sorts of good things that come from being able to meet with families on a regular basis. But also have to recognize that he probably doesn't spend as much time doing that because he is an owner. There are things that only he can do that he can't delegate out. Find these good businesses that help support your business. Ring Ring Marketing might be a good choice for you. Reach out to Welton and ask him what's going on, how we can help you out. Harvard business professor, here we go. Time to pay funeral expenses of organ donors. What do y'all think?
Alrighty then.
Okay, let's see where this rabbit hole goes. According to this recent article authored by Alex Chan of the Harvard Business School and Kurt Sweet of the School of Public Health at the University of Texas Southwest Medical Center, in the U.S., every 90 minutes a patient awaiting an organ transplant dies, while over 100,000 patients continue costly treatments such as dialysis, burdening Medicare with expenditures exceeding $30 billion annually. Might want to get onto that 3D printing human organs off of gene cells or something. Stem cells, huh? Just saying. That is one reason that is given, and along with this article authored by Avery Foreman from the Harvard Business School titled Designing Incentives That Matter Even After Death, on why it might be time to consider payment of funeral expenses by the government for organ donation. The theory here is written by, in Foreman's article is such: ethically constrained forms of compensation like funeral expense reimbursement can increase donation without commodifying organs. Good luck with that. The data suggests that modest, well-bounded incentives can have large effects, but only if they're designed with political and ethical legitimacy in mind. Ooh, this is going to be a messy one if it goes there. According to the article authored by Chan and I'm just going to go with Sweet because it sounds better than Sweat. And Professor, sorry if I'm butchering your last name. Feel free to, throw me some flame and shade in the comments. After you subscribe, of course. Appreciate that. The United States Renal Data System reports annual hemodialysis costs of roughly $100,000 per patient. Dude, I need to build those machines and rent them out or something. Wow. As a result, even a modest 5 to 10% increase in the organ donation consent rate would lower U.S. spending on dialysis alone by $200 to $800 million. That's an estimated $1 million in cost savings per kidney transplant over a recipient's lifetime. Why tie the incentive to the funeral expenses? Here's the answer given in the article. This approach seeks to honor the donor's gift, not by creating a transactional requirement that could add stress to grieving families. By capping reimbursement to reflect median funeral costs, policymakers can mitigate concerns about undue inducement or coercion, preserving human dignity and familial autonomy in donation decisions. This clearly distinguishes funeral reimbursement from outright financial compensation for organs, thereby preserving dignity and protecting families from undue financial pressures at a vulnerable time. That is extremely well-meaning. But if you're going to cap at $6,000 to $8,000, I am telling you, there are going to be people that are going to try to be upselling direct cremations to memorials. Now, the good news is the upsell isn't really an upsell. It's not costing the family anything. But I'll tell you who it is costing. It's costing the taxpayers money. So this is an interesting dilemma to have. Because part of me's like, dude, yeah, this is pretty solid. Like, if I'm going to spend tax monies on something, this is a good way to do it. But also, I can see the potential. Well, I guess that would be you know what? I'm going to take that back. I think that'd be a double win, right? If you are released from the cost constraint, providing the market's not going to do this ridiculous thing that the market might do, where it just raises the direct cremation to like $5,000 in an effort to go for the freebies here. This could be beneficial because it would inspire people to want to have some type of service. Remember, some funerals are always better than no funeral whatsoever. So that perspective really interests me. I don't know that. I don't know, man. In my advanced old age here, I get really wary about these type of programs because I want this to be a thing. I want people to consider organ donation. Like, I really believe in it. I have close friends that have been recipients. I have, I think, a professor right now that's on a list to get something. So it's like, this is awesome. But also, trying to say it's not going to be commoditized, it's going to turn into a commodity. Some point in time, something's going to happen. It's going to get tweaked. But I'm all for trying to figure it out, like 100%. Author Foreman in this article tells us there are already precedents for the government paying costs for those who help society in some ways. For instance, we would pay for the funeral of someone who gives their life for their country when they serve in the military. Bruh. Signing up with the potential to get killed should come with a little bit of perks. Okay? Just saying. I don't know that that's an equivalent for me. We will pay for the funeral of someone who donated their body for scientific research to advance society. Huh? Maybe in some states, but that's not widespread. If you donate your body to science, there are some states, California is one of them, that will pay to get your body delivered over there, but they won't pay for the funeral. That's on the family. Even in Florida, you got to pay to get the body to the anatomical board. Otherwise, the anatomical board's not going to take it. So there are different states that do things differently, but hey, man, if you know one of those states that pays for the funeral, drop it in the comments. I'd love to know who's doing that. People worry that incentives will corrupt the gift of life. Not worried about corrupting the gift of life. I'm worried about the potential for abuse of the system. Like, ultimately, whenever you say the government's going to do something, immediately the klaxons start going, the red lights are glowing, and I'm like, governmental abuse. Coming in 3, 2, 1, go. But the truth is that we already have incentives. They're just accidental and poorly distributed. All right, Tom, enlighten me, buddy. This is where I am glad that I just write and report on the differing side. Oh, my God. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Oh, brother, somebody gonna kiss the donkey.
This is where I'm glad that I just write and report on the differing sides of some issues, and I'm not the one that has to make the decision on an outcome or path forward. I'll drink to that. I do believe that discussion on issues like this are very important. Agreed. As Foreman states in his article, this is a market where the stakes are brutally clear. Organ transplantation is one of the few places where inefficiency shows up, not as a deadweight loss in a textbook, but as people dying on a waiting list. When a market fails here, it fails loudly. It is also clear to me that funeral directors and those in the death care profession will not be the ones who make these types of decisions. That is 100% true. However, since your funeral home revenues may be affected due to possible limited pay of funeral expenses, think of the $255 Social Security benefit here. Yeah, no kidding, right? It's important to be involved in a decision on any type of fixed payment that may come a funeral home's way if a policy like this is ever adopted. Fascinating articles on something I never thought of. I think you would enjoy reading the linked articles in this article. That might be something I do. That might be something I do. Hold on a second here. Here's one we didn't plan on. Tri-State High School buys Mortuary College for expansion. What are we looking at here? Who bought what? Oh! St. Xavier High School has bought property adjacent to the school that will serve as the school expands. Oh, that's cute. Okay. So these are the folks that bought CCMS's property. All right. So I did not realize that Cincinnati was next door to a... Well, I knew it was next door to a high school because I've seen their overhead maps when I did like a virtual walk by. Man, that looks like a beautiful facility. That's a shame. That's a shame they're going to lose that. But that's a little bit crazy. Like that, I'm willing to bet the St. Xavier High School has some link to Xavier University. Ooh, Tiff's on. Tiff's on. Hold on.
Have a care with my name, you will wear it out.
So it is good to see you again. I hope you are well. We are returning your monarch and his partner, hopefully not too terribly abused. Feel free to do with them what you wish. Speaking of some ethical issues, let's look at this one. I saw this and I'm just like, oh yeah, I need to get me some like barbecue tonight, some like burnt tips or something. Burnt ends. Heating homes with cremation emissions, an ethical question. All right, let's do this. Energy transfer is not a new science, yet I was surprised when I read this recent article published in The World Public Radio that was titled, How Cremations Are Helping to Heat Homes in Denmark. Kudos to Denmark. How'd you heat your home? Oh, I'm just burning, Grandma. Oh, my God.
This is some bullshit.
One of my first thoughts is always about entrepreneurship and the idea that funeral homes with crematories could probably prosper from the sale of such energy transfers. As I continued to read the article, I was somewhat amazed by that the heat exchangers in the Denmark system, a 2-cremator system that averaged a total of 14 cremations a day, provided the heat necessary for 45 homes and has done so since 2010. That seemed to me to be a large enough number of homes heated by a crematory system to actually provide tangible benefits to society. So I continued to be intrigued, and the article pointed out more and more benefits of this energy transfer as such. Reusing heat from crematoria is one of the more unusual examples of a broader sustainability practice known as waste heat recovery, also referred to as recapture, which involves recovering heat generated by industrial processes and channeling it into nearby heating systems. This excess heat from sources like supermarket refrigeration or cremations can warm dozens of homes, but larger industries can supply far more. A nearby cement plant, for example, provides as much as 25% of Aalborg's heating needs. Here's how the article explains the process according to technician Jarek Park Bisgaard. The ashes go to the next of kin. The titanium goes to a company that makes new surgical implants, and the rest of the body rises up the chimney as gases. The ashes go to the next of kin. Titanium gets recycled to go into new people. The rest of the body goes up the stack. And California is bent because we're using human composting. Yo, Newsom, it's time for you to put a ban on going to Denmark, buddy. Don't want to get no wacky ideas about using the heat from crematories to heat your homes over there in California. That was some serious shade, wasn't it? Yeah, that was some serious shade. But instead of just putting it out through the chimney, we could actually use it in a sustainable way. The high temperatures of the incinerator turn most of the body, over 90%, into water vapor, carbon dioxide, and other flue gases. Oh my God, what about all the arsenic and lead we're burning up and it's poisoning the environment? That's going to go into people's houses. We're going to get cancer.
This is some bullshit.
Before they're allowed to escape, the crematorium's filtration system scrubs the gas of certain chemicals, there we go, like chlorine, mercury, and heavy metals like lead. Down in the basement, Bisgaard explained that these blazing hot gases must be cooled first. That's the job of 2 humming boilers directly below the incinerators. These boilers, they exchange heat from the flue gases and heat up the return water from the district heating system. Since 2010, this heated water has been piped back into the city's network where it circulates through residential radiators. The crematorium can generate enough heat for about 45 homes, according to Bisgaard, who monitors the system for the city. I would love to know how many retorts are part of this system. Could you imagine, like, if every funeral home could be linked into a system like this in a metropolitan area? Like, that is significant, probably energy savings. I suppose California would be okay with this because it's not like it's actually going into the soil. It's just going, hot water through a pipe. But it's contaminated by grandma. It's the devil. As I continue to read the article, let's point out there were, however, ethical concerns about this cremation heat-to-energy process. There we go. Here is some information on that issue and the thought process which allowed crematory energy to be transferred. When the idea was first discussed in Denmark about 2 decades ago, the ethical questions were centered on whether the system would use the dead as fuel. You are. Spoiler alert, you are. Those concerns were brought before the Danish Council of Ethics, an independent body that deliberates such issues to help inform public policy. In 2006, the council concluded that the practice was acceptable, noting that there are good reasons, including environmental reasons, for doing so. So, burning your dead to keep houses warm, good. All right. One of the major reasons cited was that the generation of heat was not the primary function of a cremation, but rather a byproduct. Tomato, tomato. All right, Tom, what's up, buddy? Reading this article was thought-provoking and provides points for both sides of the issue, and I see the merits of both sides, as do I. I don't think we'll see a cremation energy anytime soon in the United States, certainly not in the San Joaquin Valley, but there may be some large crematory operators who see an income potential for this energy generation and pursue the ideas. I'm just going to flat out say this. Y'all in Texas, when you had that big freeze that killed a bunch of people because your grid went down, this could be something you could look at. Problem is, all right, so let's get serious about it. Okay, let's get serious about it. Denmark is like the size of Texas's fingernail. Now, I know that's an exaggeration. Okay, I know that is an exaggeration. But the key point remains that we have states in the United States that are like the size of the European Union. This type of infrastructure could only be deployed really in either like the New England states, looking at you like Jersey, Maryland, mostly Maryland. Some of the larger states might have some serious trouble with something like this, just because it's only going to work in cities. It's not going to be like something you could do with like a rural funeral home. So I can imagine that we could get away with some of this. Man, you cleaned the glasses and they got dirty. What's up with that? This is just another topic to show how death care is changing, how society is changing, and how we as a society look at differing options as solutions to problems. Yeah, 100%. But what's really nuts, at least in my opinion, hello, I get an over-engineered garbage can that has a motion sensor and just throw stuff away because I'm lazy. Just turn around, hand, boom, thing comes up. It doesn't want to do it. Story of my life and most of my relationships. This has been going on since 2006. Literally the year I graduated with my master's degree. This is really the first time we're hearing anything like this. That's a little crazy to me. Like, I would have thought someone would have been trolling this on the internet a lot more. An energy transfer success story. In my community, well over 30 years ago, the community located the refuse center where all our garbage is taken to be incinerated into an industrial location not far from our community's technical college, hospital, and a 3M manufacturing plant. The facility sells the steam generated from the burning of the waste to those facilities for their heating use. According to an archived article from 2015, 171,756,000 pounds of steam were sold to nearby 3M Douglas County Hospital and Alexandria Technical and Community College in that year. So yeah, we're already doing this, so now we just be extending those pipes to human crematories. Tiff says, just out on a death call. Oof. Hope it's going to be an easy one. Well, then again, over there on your side of the Atlantic, they don't build them as big as they build them over here in Texas. I mean, I'm a pretty big dude, and I start walking through stores here in Texas, and I realize like there's people that could literally look at me and go, that's a snack. You're little." Dude, seriously, there's some big people in Texas. Like, I'm big, but people are big. Future funeral directors, education, license portability, hiring practices, all in flux. Man, throat's getting scratchy. Dude, it was cold in Fort Worth, that convention. Let me tell you what. I'm sure probably that didn't do me any favors. Probably gonna get sick over the weekend now. I spent 6 years as a board member of the University of Minnesota, which comprises the 8th largest campus by enrollment in the United States, counting over 55,000 students. Miami-Dade had like 120,000. We win. During that tenure, I spent 2 of those years as chair of the Finance Committee and 2 years as chair of the Mission Committee, which deals with the academic side of the university. If anything, those 6 years taught me that change and movement in the educational system of our country moves at a slow pace. Almost as slow as government. However, I also learned that university community, whether it be athletics, finance, or educational situations, does move when the market dictates it must. You would hope so. If not, your school's going to have a hard time surviving. The market dictating it must is how I would define what I see happening in the future of new funeral directors. Recently, I have seen articles and discussions centered around change in funeral service education, license portability, and hiring practices for funeral directors and morticians. I think a lot of the discussion has been prompted by market conditions. Funeral homes, crematories, and cemeteries have all seen their business practices change in the past few years because of the changing consumer preferences. That is now reaching the point that the future workforce of death care needs to be addressed. For instance, this comment was recently part of an article about a potential Minnesota change to license portability that is currently sitting in the Minnesota legislature's contemplated bills for this year. A report by St. Paul-based Real Time Talent. Employer-led, public-private collaborative focused on aligning Minnesota's workforce. With nearly a decade of experience solving critical challenges, we close gaps and improve talent pipelines with a wide range of data analytics and innovative strategies. Okay. Cool. Found Minnesota currently has only 51 licensed funeral directors for every 100 open positions. 1 in 3 are 65 or older.
We have a problem. We have a problem. Ladies and gentlemen, we have problems.
And 50% of the workforce is projected to be gone by 2029. Nuts. That is absolutely nuts. You know what? Might have something to do with the fact you need a bachelor's degree in your state, but what do I know? When you see that statement, it indicates that market conditions are dictating potential changes to issues around funeral home licensure. Yeah. You can see this article on the potential Minnesota mortician license portability here. Okay. Boink. What you got here? Licensure compact plan to allow morticians from outside Minnesota to practice here still has life. If a funeral home director takes their last ride to work in a coffin, who fills their position in Minnesota? It'd be someone with a 4-year degree. Called it. Minnesota is one of 4 states across the country that requires a bachelor's degree in mortuary science to practice, a requirement Representative John Huot says is exacerbating a workforce shortage. Sometimes you don't need consultants to figure that out. The bill, he sponsors, I guess, HF 84 to establish a mortuary science licensure compact to allow morticians who have practiced in states that don't require 4-year degrees to practice in Minnesota. The bill was laid over on Monday by the House Health, Finance, and Policy Committee. In lieu of a 4-year degree, the bill would require a mortuary scientist. Dude, I'm a mortuary scientist? Ew. I feel pretty special right now. I can call myself a mortuary scientist. From another jurisdiction, be credentialed and receive a passing score in the national board exam or similar exam. They would also be required to perform at least 25 funeral services, complete at least 25 funeral arrangements, and perform at least 25 embalming cases. No newbies. Representative Tina Lieblink is concerned the bill does not address the root of the problem. Instead, she would like to see licensing requirements changed statewide. That's because Johnny's taken the page out of Florida's handbook. It's like, dude, we'll just take whoever wants to come here and we'll throw money at them, which probably salaries in Minnesota are higher than some of the other states, so you're probably going to get people jumping ship to come up there. So John's not addressing the core of the issue, which is more people need to be involved in wanting to be in death care, but that's a hell of a deeper problem than just trying to find warm bodies to take things up. Instead, she'd like to see licensing requirements changed statewide. University of Minnesota is one of only a handful of schools in the country that offers a 4-year degree in mortuary science because of the state's education requirement. Dude, there's some states that have some like really wacky, weird things. Like, oh, well, we don't require a 4-year degree to be a funeral director. We just require a 4-year degree for you to come to mortuary school where you get an associate in science or a diploma. Like, I've seen stuff like that. Who is it? Pennsylvania? Don't you all do something like that in Pennsylvania? You got some like weird requirement that you have to have a 4-year degree to get into mortuary school or some silliness. Yeah, there's some weird, wacky, crazy stuff. I wonder if we pass this, it almost encourages someone to, instead of starting their career in Minnesota, to move out of state, work for 3 years, and then come back. Yeah. 100%. The market dictates the situation. You don't want them to leave, you pay your damn people more money than everyone else. Dude, this is not rocket science. Like, come on. If you don't want them to leave the state, compensation's a hell of a good motivator to keep someone steady and solid right where they are. But if you're going to be at the same pay level as somewhere else, of course they're going to leave. And then what are you going to have to do? You're going to have to pay them more to get them to come back. On written testimony, Jay Dietz, Vice President of Funeral Practice and Experience for Verton, said the bachelor's degree requires is keeping qualified morticians from helping Minnesotans in their time of greatest need. A report by St. Paul-based Real-Time Talent, he indicated, found Minnesota currently has only 51 licensed funeral directors for every 100 open positions. 1 in 3, yeah, we already saw that in the top line. Oh, that's where it ends? Well, that's unfortunate. I was hoping that would get more into the guts of it. Oh, well. Here's another article, the one from District of Columbia Policy Center, arguing that licensure, in this case mortuary licensure, only serves to raise costs to consumers, and the cost for potential funeral directors to be educated. This group sees no value in licensure, it raises costs to consumers. Let's check this out. Occupational licensing creates barriers to workforce participation and raises costs for funeral directors and embalmers. It also causes people to not throw contaminated things in water supplies because they're stupid and give everyone diphtheria. Oh boy, here we go. On March 23, 2026, Amelia Kalma, director of the Wilkes Initiative for Housing Policy, testified before the D.C. Council Committee on Health. Her testimony highlighted the licensing challenges created by whatever and best practices for occupational licensing reform across the industries in the district. Read the complete testimony below or download a PDF copy. Oh God, how much is this? All right. Let's see. Cliff Notes version. Testifying legislators have been blah, 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 blah. The research on occupational license has grown substantially in recent years, and it tells a consistent story. Licensing requirements routinely raise prices for consumers, restrict employment opportunity for workers, and produce little to no measurable improvement in service quality or public safety. Yo! Amelia! So would you also support removing the Federal Trade Commission funeral rule, which creates unnecessary barriers in competition and expenses for funeral homes, which also are documented to raise costs at funeral homes in order to reduce them? If not, the bill creates a standalone embalmer's license or credential that already exists within the funeral director's license. I've said that before. Why are you separating the two if, you got one that already does everything? Under current D.C. law, funeral director's license requires a candidate to have embalmed at least 25 human remains, served an apprenticeship, and receive a degree in mortuary science. Yeah. The embalming requirement is in line with mortuary science curriculums, which typically include embalming as a core component. Yeah. because it has been since like the 1900s. Only now we're trying to second guess that. The bill also increases the time and training burden required to enter the profession. Previously, a 2-year associate's degree in mortuary science combined with a 1-year apprenticeship was sufficient. Drop the apprenticeship down to 6 months, dude. You want them in? Get them in. There is nothing you're going to learn between months 7 and 12 that's going to be virtually different than months 1 through 6. Okay? First, more people are graduating high school now than in the early 1900s. More people have college credits and are higher educated than people in the early to middle 1900s. So, funeral directors, generally speaking, are coming in with some level of knowledge and education. You don't need to have a 1-year training program because they're not graduating at 17, becoming morticians, and we got to teach them how to be functional adults. Well, we probably still need to teach them to be functioning adults because, people have a breakdown if they run out of their, favorite vegan milk for their mochaccino. So, yeah, we definitely need something to train people to be functional adults. The new legislation requires effectively 2,000 hours of work as an intern. Going off the deep end. Raising the cost and time required to enter a field that is already quite small. God, this is just so stupid. This is just so stupid. If you're going to do 2,000 hours, then get rid of the education requirement. Like, either you want an apprenticeship or you want education. All right? Stop trying to blend both of these together. This is not a hard thing. Establishing a new licensing category, board, and regulatory infrastructure for an occupation of this size imposes administrative costs on the districts that are deeply disproportionate to any conceivable benefit. Licensing creates barriers without improving quality. This bill exemplifies a pattern that occupational licensing research have documented across dozens of professions. Studies of occupational licensing have similarly found that licensing requirements are associated with higher prices. Looking at you, lawyers. Less competition, no increase in consumer satisfaction, no increases in quality of service or public safety. Yeah, there's also a report by a guy named McChesney that also shows that everything that had to do with the FTC funeral rule literally created no increase in customer satisfaction because customer satisfaction was already high to begin with. So, the government is used to doing very stupid things that sound good on paper because they just want to do it. Seriously, if the government could license whatever drugs it takes to make bad decisions, like, we could sell that and probably offset the entire national debt. Licensing primarily functions as a barrier to entering the workforce. Yes. That is the purpose of a license, so not everyone can do it. Because, I know, now, work with me for just a second. You all may not believe this. Some people are stupid. They are so stupid, I'm sure that God in heaven is wondering why he ever put a prohibition on another flood. Those are the type of people we do not want doing those jobs. So we use licenses to keep them out of those professions. We should also establish barriers for them breeding so that they do not continue to propagate their inferior gene lines. But considering that goes into like human rights violations, probably not going to have that. But at least we can keep them from being funeral directors and dangers to like society. The same is true for the funeral industry. Yes, all licenses are barriers to entry. Duh. Studies shown that occupational licensing funeral services have contributed to increased price and reduced labor force participation. Yes, because those of us who went through the hell it was to get the license wish to make more than a barista, because we have damn well earned it. Not throwing that much shade against baristas, but you're not a funeral director. And if you, by accident, like, stab yourself or burn yourself, it's not a big deal. You stab yourself in the prep room, you could probably kill yourself through slow, painful disease over time. So it's a little bit different. Consequences for workers, particularly women and people of color. A recurring finding in the occupational licensing literature is that licensing requirements do not fall equally on all workers. Oh God, here we go. Women, immigrants, people of color, and those with lower incomes face disproportionate barriers to entry under stricter licensing regimes. As occupations become more regulated through licensing, the share of workers who are women, black, and foreign-born Hispanic workers declines. Maybe in some industries, but funeral service is turning into a very woman-centric industry. I also have an entire school of ethnic minority students. So it's like people are coming to college, people are becoming funeral directors. The entirety of my population at Miami-Dade College was minority. So, or I'll say it so it's statistically correct, was overwhelmingly minority. There are prohibitions to getting people through mortuary school? Absolutely. Let's talk about ways to remove those barriers. But do not say they need to know less in an effort to try to make some equity argument, okay? Working around dead things is dangerous work. You need to have training. End of story. And the way some funeral directors behave, we really don't need an apprenticeship system. Like, oh my God. If the council's goal is occupation become regulated through this here word, If the council's goal is to make it easier for women, immigrants, or career changers to enter this profession, this bill moves in the wrong direction. I think that's a lame excuse, but that's just me. What this evidence supports: there are occupations where market failures or genuine safety concerns justify a licensing requirement. The question is whether the specific requirements, proposed are proportionate to the risk and whether licensing is even the right tool. I can tell you who's a tool. The Funeral Directors Licensing Reform Amendment Act creates additional barriers to workforce entry in a small industry, raises costs for district residents, and imposes administrative burdens without evidence that it will improve the quality of services. You literally are stating the entire argument against the FTC funeral rule. Congratulations. These are predictable consequences of occupational licensing expansion documented across professions and confirmed by decades of research. The district should decline to needlessly add another credential to funeral directing and embalming and instead consider how licensing reform can better serve DC workers and residents who rely on their services. Well, that's cute. It links to the same exact thing. Okay, so Amelia, what do you do? Her research focuses on increasing housing, social policy, and workforce issues. Authored report on many topics, including TOPA, rent control, Wow, I'm glad you're very capable of understanding the funeral industry. Has worked at Georgetown University Policy Innovation Lab and Montgomery City County Council. Bachelor of Arts from Carleton College, Master of Public Policy from Georgetown. I mean, yeah, you got some solid education there. Board of Funeral DC Department consumer retention. Yeah, so it's always funny. It's always funny that, we can just reduce the barriers to entry, we'll get more people in, it'll solve the problem. Let's look at the regulation of the industry. Like, flat up, let's look at the FTC funeral and the barriers that causes for funeral homes to be able to lower prices. Oh my God, but we got to protect everyone from the bad funeral directors. You're just going to create more of them. Yeah, not only are we going to create more of them, we're going to make it even easier for people to become one. Oh boy. Like, I can just see that sled heading down the mountain and entering like Warp 1. If the Vulcans show up, we know that we achieved warp potential. As we move forward in funeral service education, there are bound to be other changes. Yep, I agree. While the profession must have competency moving forward, there is a movement from potential students of mortuary science that they want less time in school, less cost of education, the ability to complete their educations online if they so choose. That said, there is also a demand for in-person bachelor degree programs that offer the experience of being within a campus learning environment. Yeah. Let me tell you something, because I am on the front lines of educational costs. The prices people charge schools can be summed up in one word.
This is some bullshit.
Absolute military grade
Is this some bullshit?
Yep. So, you want to lower the cost of education? We got to find a way to lose some of these services, because all I see happening is more and more requirements are being dumped onto schools to comply with things, but there is no extra funding. Mortuary schools don't get grants. There's no one out there that says, hey, it'd be a really good idea. Let's go ahead and subsidize a mortuary science education. Instead, we're told, oh, you're not STEM. You're not a real science. But yeah, we're mortuary scientists. Great. There's what, 2 grants out there for $10,000 each? Let me tell you what, 10 grand doesn't even pay for the online proctor systems that you need in order to ensure that people aren't cheating their brains out on online exams. So 10 grand doesn't buy squat. It is ridiculous. The lack of support the government gives to morticians and mortuary science education or funeral service education, whatever your poison. You want to solve the problem, need to get some juice injected into that. The secret, I think, is the ability to offer both worlds to those students of differing needs and wants. There are plenty of options for students. You need a cheap education, you can find it. Okay? You need a cheap education, you go to a public school. In the state in which you're a resident, you take advantage of in-state resident tuition. In the state of Florida, you want to be a funeral director, it might cost you what, like $13,000, $14,000. You spend 13 grand, which is damn near fully coverable by federal financial aid. No debt. You're walking into a $22, $23 an hour internship in most places in Florida. Probably going to make 60, 70 grand as a funeral director in a market that gives a damn about their funeral directors. And what's the fun part? You spend a couple of years doing that in Florida, Minnesota will hire you if they adjust their law, because congratulations, you've got all the requisite education that we need now. You don't need the bachelor's. There are great advantages to public schools. What's the problem? You want to go to a public school and you're a non-resident, you're going to pay typical mortuary school fees. You're going to be spending 30 to 50 grand. Again, 30 to 50 grand for an occupation that, if you are a functional human being, and probably even if you're not, there will be someone who will hire you. You will find a job. There are so many people needing you that you will find a job. In 15 years, it went from, we really don't need anyone. You're just another, we'll get another intern tomorrow. There's like a dozen of you waiting in the wings. To, there is no one out there. And these people I see on Facebook that are like, I can't find something, poo-poo on those communities that aren't supporting you. Like, poo-poo on them, and chances are pretty good you probably don't want to work for those firms because they're going to be toxic as hell. My guess is that the market will figure the situation out, and as we move forward, we'll see things happening in funeral service education market in the not-so-distant future. It's interesting, however, on some of the trade-offs of funeral service of education. While Minnesota, on the topic of potential portability of licensure change, is one of only 4 states that require a bachelor's degree to practice mortuary science, according to this article that appeared in Pierce College's website, it ranked number 1 in approximate funeral director wages at $88,000. Yes, 100%, dude. You lower your licensing requirement, you're probably going to get an influx of people from places like Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Louisiana. And Louisiana's got probably one of the best licensing schemes right now, a 6-month internship. Thank God Louisiana figured it out. That might lead one to speculate if there's a correlation between educational experience and future earning capacity. Questions such as, will that degree eventually lead to advancement opportunities as death care world becomes more corporate? Maybe. But I can tell you what happened in the state of Florida. They started opening the door to anyone who wanted to be a funeral director. And then the dual licensee had to be the funeral director in charge. Well, that's going to protect those who went the full route and have the most information. And then what happened?
A few moments later.
Well, we're going to go ahead and let funeral director onlys who don't have the dual license, we're going to let them be in charge of a funeral home as long as it doesn't have an embalming room.
A few moments later.
Oh, you know what? There's such a shortage. We're going to let those same people be in charge of more than one location, as long as it's within like 50 miles or something of each other.
A few moments later.
You know what? Do you even need to have a degree to do this? You can just go ahead and go to work for someone, and maybe the corporate firms will have a training program, and that'll be the best for you. You start giving up some of this licensure, you're going to start having some really stupid things happen. And what's your problem? You have 100 years of legal jurisprudence that says, hey, you've had a standardized education. This is what it entails. Here's the people that certify that. And this is what it's supposed to mean, so that when you inevitably screw up, because funeral directors, even on the best of times, will make a mistake, there is a reasonable standard based off of all of that, including the education. And now you pull the education out of it. Now, the counter argument somebody can throw at me is like, well, hey, the same could be said about lowering the internship. Yes, counter argument to that is people are smarter now, technically, than they were back then. Getting a high school diploma is not optional these days. If you don't have a high school diploma, it can be a problem. And anyone who knows me knows I love Mike Rowe. I love his foundation. I love the fact that he wants to get people in the skilled trades. And hell, man, you can go to work for an electrician and walk into an $88,000 a year job. Hard work, it'll take you years, but you can do it without ever stepping foot in school, just by going to work as an apprentice and learning via that. Funeral directing, I'm not sure that that's the way you want to do it. That's the way we did it in the 1800s, and quality was all over the place. I'm going to let it sit there and let it rest. Because I'm not going to get onto that horse to say that, oh, well, you know, funeral directors are smarter than electricians. Maybe not. Both jobs are dangerous. They're dangerous in different ways. And what do both jobs have in common? A healthy respect for the dangerous stuff. Because if you don't respect the danger wins 100% of the time. So you have incentive to pay attention, learn. The continuing growth of women's leadership opportunities in death care. Uh-oh, we're almost coming up on time. Back in 1990 or 91, I was invited to an event hosted by the late Tom Johnson for funeral profession leaders. With rare exception, I have continued to attend the annual event for the past 35 years, and much of what I was able to learn about the greater death care world came from the people I met through this event. I didn't learn embalming or funeral directing at this event, which centers around golf and camaraderie. Oh, golf. Ugh. But I was able to network, and it was that network of people who I met at this event over the years that greatly influenced the business and operational decisions that I implemented to make my funeral home much more successful. As I continue to write for Funeral Director Daily, that networking continues. To be important to me as I continue to call on my friends from the event, many of whom now are national industry leaders, for their opinions and thoughts on articles I'm planning to publish. I thought of how important that network of colleagues has been to me last week when I received press releases on 3 events with what I see is a new network of leaders coming into funeral service purview. That new network is women in the funeral service profession. At the time I received those press releases, I have thought about the networking event I attended and how important it has been for my professional development. I also thought that with much publicized 75% or more of mortuary school graduates now being women, it is time for them to be involved in events of this type that will greatly enhance their careers. You see, I'm old enough to remember when there were very few females in funeral service, at least as licensed professionals and business leaders. It's why I see such opportunity in the recently announced Women's Conference with the moniker Momentum, a women's leadership accelerator that is being sponsored by Homesteaders Life. You can learn more about that conference here. Isn't Homesteaders got a female CEO right now? Got to eat crow on that. Steve Schaefer is the board chair, president and CEO of Homesteaders Life. Okay, I was wrong. Hey, Homesteaders, need up your game, guys. You can learn more about that conference here. In the same week, I received a press release from about the women's professional group Funeral Women Lead and their opportunities for networking, including at their Women's Leadership Academy coming up in late September. You can learn more about Funeral Women Lead and their activities here. Finally, I received information on the NFDA's Professional Women's Conference. Yeah. According to that press release, which you can access here, that conference is intentionally designed to be personal, collaborative, and impactful. It brings together women at all stages of their careers to share ideas, build connections, and return home with renewed confidence and practical tools they can put to work immediately. Funeral service has been changing for some time, with a greater number of females entering the profession, becoming leaders in the profession. It's interesting, but when you think about it, Christine Pepper has been executive director of the NFDA since 2001. That's a good run, man. Barbara Kemmis has been executive director of CANA since 2011. Barbara Kemmis is awesome. CANA is a member of the American board. It's so much fun to work with her. So the Trailblazers are not necessarily new, but their success is leading to more and more opportunities for women. And now, two of the largest funeral home cemetery consolidators led by females, with Jennifer Hay, the CEO of Parklawn Corporation. That didn't age well. And Lily Donahue, the CEO at Everstory Partners. Yeah, that didn't end well. If you don't know what that's about, just feel free to Google Parklawn Corporation and see what's made the news recently. For whatever reason, funeral service work was predominantly a male role in United States society. However, that is rapidly changing. Actually, I can't remember. Yeah, it went to a guy. Whoops. For whatever reason, funeral service work was predominantly a male role in United States society. Not if you go back far enough. Once again, the benefits of a classical mortuary science or funeral service education. However, that is rapidly changing, and the opportunities for females are continuing to grow, and attending one of these leadership conferences, which provide opportunity for networking, can, in my opinion, greatly enhance one's opportunity for finding leadership roles within the profession. Oh yeah, I'm all for that, 100%. 100%. It's all about who you know and who you met. 100%. The information and events provided by these organizations should give women from all across death care the opportunity to network like I did and hopefully move their career forward. Yeah. For what it's worth, the National Funeral Directors Association has never, to my knowledge, had a female president. Ooh, the air conditioner just kicked on in here. Here's listing press since 1882. Yeah, the air conditioner definitely just kicked on. That same listing shows the current makeup of the NFDA Board of Directors. It should be noted that Ellen Wynn McBrayer of Georgia is currently the board secretary. Might she, in the near future, be the first? I hope so. I hope so. 100%. She'd be a good leader. This will be the last one. What do we got? Perceived value is now the strongest driver of death care customer satisfaction. I'm excited to read this one. Best for last. Last week, Johnson Consulting Group released their annual sales and customer service trends report for 2026. The report is compiled by customer surveys that over the past 5 years. Okay, that doesn't work, but all right. And have included 654,327 sales and survey records in that time period. That's pretty good. Here are some key takeaways from this year's findings according to Johnson's Consulting Group. Perceived value is now the strongest driver of satisfaction and financial performance, overtaking service quality alone as the key differentiator between high and average performing funeral homes. That's wild. Think about that. People don't even care how good your service is. It is only their perception of that and what type of value that drives them. They could pick you up in a Maserati, another guy could pick you up in a Cadillac. That doesn't matter as long as they perceive the value and satisfaction of the service being given. Y'all need to pay attention to that. So you need to make sure that everything you do adds value to what you're doing. Which means SCI is on the right idea. You want to educate your people, make sure that they understand what their options are satisfied with what they're choosing, and you provide at least mediocre service. And if you do that, chances are pretty good that you'll score pretty high. Pre-need burial fulfillment delivers the highest customer experience scores, including the strongest NPS and TVI, confirming the long-term value of advanced planning, which also makes it more affordable. Traditional burial and memorialized cremation continue to outperform simplified offerings, delivering higher satisfaction, stronger perceived value, and greater revenue resilience, even amid pricing pressure. That's wild. People want services. They don't want the turn and burns. They don't want the drop-ins. Firms using structured incentive compensation plans show higher sales averages and stronger resilience, reinforcing the link between aligned incentives, accountability, and sustained performance. That's pretty important. So that means if you're looking for a job, look to see what that total compensation package is going to be, not just the hourly wage. And the better you are, the more you might go. But there's also incentives to make them happy and for you not to oversell and be, a complete jerk and a predator. Tom says, I'm not surprised that perceived values overtaken service quality alone is the key indicator of high-performing funeral homes. For the past couple of years, the debate across America has been about the affordability in almost all purchases. It's not surprising to see that thought process come to death care. I agree. As a consumer, I expect quality service and performance, whether I'm buying a high-priced Porsche or paying a high price for death care services. That is simply the expectation of paying a high price. Yeah, I'm about the same. Now, granted, I set my bar pretty low, but I appreciate quality service and performance. However, if I can get quality performance from a Chevrolet Equinox, my car, or better than expected goods and service for my family's death care needs, whether it be cremation or earth burial, and pay less at the same time, then I will perceive the value to be better. Yeah. I think as Americans go through continued thoughts of affordability, those businesses and services that can deliver satisfaction at a lesser price point will become high performers in their industry category. I'm just going to say it. I'm proof of that. Okay? Can have a more affordable price, a superior service, people will come back. I can have a little bit of a higher price. But if perceived value and service is the driver, they will pay a little bit more. There's plenty of studies that show that, not just in the United States, but even abroad. I'm also not surprised by that the third bullet point, which concludes that traditional burial and memorialized cremation continue to outperform simplified offerings, delivering higher satisfaction, stronger perceived value, and greater revenue resilience, even amid pricing pressure. My take on that is that America's funeral directors are good at the work they do, which begs to argue the point, do we even need the FTC funeral rule anymore? Right? If people are selecting traditional burial and memorialized cremation, they're trusting their funeral directors, they're delivering superior service, maybe the rule's moot. Again, go read McChesney's report. It's pretty cool, if you can find it. In traditional burial service and cremations that include a memorial service, funeral directors spend more time with the family than would on direct cremation. They do, which is unfortunate because you should be spending time with your direct cremation families too, even if it is a direct cremation. I believe that the additional funeral director time spent with the deceased family builds trust, confidence, and goodwill in the services purchased and leads those families who choose those options with the idea of greater perceived value for the amount spent. I'll also note a recent article I found in Australia about direct cremation mentioned that many families believe the process is too transactional, does not allow for a farewell moment. Yeah? So shoring up those processes might be a way to boost perceived value and satisfaction among the direct cremation segment. Funeral Director Daily over the next few weeks will take a more in-depth look at Johnson Consulting Group's 2026 Sales and Customer Survey Trends and Insights Report and continue with articles about what we find concerning about death care consumer behavior. If you're interested in learning more about Johnson Consulting Group, you could click the link right there. Lots of good stuff out there right now, folks. real exciting time to be in funeral service. Like, hell yeah, man. So everyone, hey, thanks for stopping by. If there's something you'd ever like me to cover, drop it into the comments below. I read all the comments on all the videos. Thank you all for spending the time. If you're checking this out later, thank you again for taking the time. And look forward to the next live stream. Professor Finn signing off. Peace out, everyone. Have a good night.